What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Listography. Jason, Joe, and Crams are here. And this week, we are ranking the studio albums of Phil Collins. We've already done Genesis, so Cramser and I did at least, and we did the Peter Gabriel solo catalog as well. So complete the trinity, I guess, by doing the Phil Collins discography today. Critically, probably not looked upon as favorably as the other discographies, but, you know, I guess we'll see how it shakes out. I think probably the first three, maybe the first four, and then I also had both sides on CD. That's where I am. How about you guys?
I knew all the 80s ones. None of them in my top 5. Maybe a top 10, 15 in there somewhere. It's tough because you got Genesis in the 80s, and you got Peter Gabriel in the 80s. Phil's kind of the third man, and he's the odd man out for the most part, but he did some interesting stuff. I love Phil. I can't speak ill of Phil too much, but I don't know if anyone here was really like excited to do the Phil Collins discography. Doesn't like inspire like, oh, finally the Phil Collins solo. Yes.
I wouldn't say I wasn't like excited as like a fan of Phil Collins. I was excited just because of the intrigue of getting into his albums. I knew Face Value. That's the only album of the 8 that we're doing. It's the only one I've listened to before. I had made a big Phil Collins playlist growing up back in like the LimeWire days, and I knew and liked all of his hits. Just a little bit of a spoiler, I won't be kind to a lot of these albums, but I'm with Joe. I love Phil Collins as a guy, as a member of Genesis. I like a good bit of his style. I just don't like his solo albums, as you will find out shortly. But yeah, I mean, would love to meet him one day. Seems like a cool dude. Just watched To the Bone, the movie that his daughter's in. So big fan of the family. Easily the weakest link of the Genesis Gabriel Collins triad, but couldn't imagine life without him. So love him, but Lego, let's do this.
I think there's a chance that I like the Phil Collins solo catalog more than either of you, which I thought Joe for sure would be the biggest fan of it, but I don't know. I don't think it's that bad, but one of them is for sure. And I don't know, you see Testify on some of the lists. If you Google the worst albums of all time, Testify shows up on some of those lists. Kind of thought about throwing it into the mix in March Badness when we did the tournament. And in fact, it has the lowest Metacritic score of the year for the year it was released. I don't think that's the worst Phil Collins album, though. I think the worst Phil Collins album easily is Dance Into the Light. I think Dance Into the Light is a very bad record. Hugh Padgham comes back to produce. It is just so damn lame. And I think the thing that's especially sad about it is that it seems like Phil thinks that this is kind of like an interesting expansion of his sound, and that he's doing something really interesting and different. He's kind of dabbling in world music and African rhythms. It's kind of, I think that he sees this as like his Graceland, but it is just the most watered down version. Every single thing that he tries on this is just the most lame, boring version of what he's trying. The songwriting is so corny. Lorenzo, that track is terrible. I hate the bass sound on it and all the production, really. Wear My Hat is terrible. He does an atrocious cover of The Times They Are A-Changing at the end of it. It's a bad record. I got it at 1.5 stars.
All right, I got to go next now. That's easily one of the better Phil Collins records because of all of the adjectives you decide. You don't know what you're looking for with Phil. It's supposed to be corny. Like if you're looking for nuance and intellect with Phil Collins and you're finding it, then I don't know what acid trip you were on during this discography. Testify is without a doubt the worst Phil Collins album by far. It is 1.5 stars, my number 8. Incredibly overwrought and overly emotional attempt. It is just void of like any tact or anything. He's like really attached to that Tarzan sound. Every song is like a wannabe pop ballad that could be bigger than You'll Be in My Heart, but just fails. It's overproduced with big drums, very dated arrangement, synthetic and just cluttered. Easily his worst lyrical album. The lyrics to Don't Get Me Started are just ridiculous. Makes my interpretation of Billy Joel lyrics look like a good like Faulkner like piece of writing. It is just this really shallow, gossipy, like common folk chit chat at the water cooler, but about really serious issues. And it's got the early aughts terrible production, especially with the drums, like on Swing Low. It's just sappy, uneventful, boring, not challenging, not fun. The whole album is basically just meant to be like on a rack on February 14th for last minute Valentine's Day gift ideas, like just being like, oh, I'm gonna get some roses, a teddy bear, and this Phil Collins album for you, honey. Here you go. We're in love. Really bad. 1.5 stars. Testify.
With Crams are a little bit. I got Testify as my bottom. It's like one of those Walmart like exclusive albums that just, you know, they put out just because they know Walmart's going to distribute it, and you know, probably get an extra 30,000 record sales just by having it in Walmart. It's a bad album. It doesn't have any of the R&B. It doesn't have the Phoenix horns. It's so adult contemporary that it's like the most adult contemporary album, I think, maybe of all time. And by this time, it was after Tarzan, so he just completely given up. And it's really apparent on this album. I don't think there's a single interesting song or moment. I don't think I hate it quite as much as Cramser, but I'm giving it 2 stars, which is basically the lowest I can go for an album that has like any sort of professionalism in it at all. And it would be the lowest rated of the year, one of the lowest rated of the entire 2000s for sure. And it stinks. Yeah, I'll give you a testimonial, Phil. Your album sucks.
Well, Testify is my number 7. I don't buy that it's the worst album of '02 though, not with all the other crap that was happening around then, with all the boy bands and the pop divas and all the new metal especially. There's got to be worse records than Testify.
I'll take NSYNC or Britney Spears over this any day of the week.
I will not. I don't think this record is as bad as you guys made it out to be, but definitely not good. I won't go that far. Like Cram said, it sounds really dated, but it sounds kind of dated to multiple eras. Like you got the glitchy kind of terrible 2000s production with the drum beats and stuff, but the writing is very like late 80s. So I think even in '02 it would have sounded dated. Still sounds dated. I don't know. It's kind of a confusing record. Not great. I think some of the songs are pretty bad. You know, not interesting. Not good. 2 stars for Testify.
Well, let's clear up one thing. It is not the worst album of 2002 because Corporate America by Boston came out. Are we all in agreement on that? Let's just end the video. We love a good opportunity to knock those bad Boston albums, and easily the worst one. Are You Passionate by Neil Young the same year? Not a good one either, in my opinion. But let's get back to Phil. Number 7, I've got Going Back. I mean, it's almost like a running joke. Like at first when we started the channel and we're going to older artists, we were like, oh, does everyone that's been around for 30 years eventually do a covers album? Ha ha ha. And now it's like, no, seriously. But seriously, yeah, they do. Going Back, I'm going 2 stars. It's almost just like too fine to be good, if that makes sense. Like a lot of the actual instrumentation and music sounds pretty decent, and it's very almost just copycat the songs that he's chosen, and the songs that he's chosen are all really good. Joe recently on the 60s songs of the year was talking about his Holland Dozier, like Love, a lot of songs here from those writers, and Yeah, the songs are good. There's just no interesting take on any of them, and he just sings them straight up in the same fashion as much better singers, which much better styles that suit all of those songs. It just is a wasted project. It's not terrible, but it's very lousy. It's not terrible because the songs are good classic songs, but there's nothing to cling to here. Nothing interesting about it. He doesn't have the voice to do these songs. That's it. 2 stars going back.
I mean, honestly, these 90s and 2000s albums are just all so lame that I had trouble choosing which one would be at my bottom. Yeah, a 2-star album with both sides. I think it just sucks, especially coming after, but seriously, a couple of years earlier, which at least you could kind of tell he was heading towards like adult contemporary, but I didn't think he would hit it so hard. And this album, there is just nothing interesting at all. He performed all the songs himself. He played all the instruments, and that's a big sort of miss from him. Really, the reason I like his 80s stuff so much, he had the Phoenix horns, and he had some great session players, some great guest stars on all of them. And on this, he tries to do it himself, and it's just so boring. Like, it's just, there's no like joy or anything to grasp here. It's like slow, turgid ballads, vaguely uplifting lyrics, and I don't know, there's no like poppy songwriting. Like, he's really good pop songwriter. He just completely abandons that in favor of sort of like, I want to be on Delilah After Dark or whatever. Just really disappointing that he would fall off so quickly after a good run of 80s albums. But yeah, just 2 stars, really just lame.
My number 6 is Going Back, his Motown and soul covers record that Cram just talked about. I agree completely with Cram. It's fine. It sounds all right. He even said that his goal wasn't to bring anything new to the tracks. He just wanted to kind of pay homage to his favorite songs. It's just a total vanity project, which is cool. Whatever. Hope he had fun making it, but there's really no point in listening to this over the classic tracks. They're just not as good. So again, sounds fine. His voice sounds fine. Songs are good. 2.5 stars.
It's actually a great way to put it. Like, it's cool that he did it, but it's just no point to listen to it. Like, you just tell people you did it. Tell people that you've been covering songs in your studio, and that's it. Just be like, yeah, I've been really into Motown lately. End of story. Just cover that in an interview. What have you been into? Oh, I've been into Motown. Okay, done. Don't record it. It's just pointless. Number 6, I'm with Joe. Finally, a listography where Joe and I are like eye to eye on the crap. I love it. Both sides, 2 stars. He's going for those mellow adult contemporary, all the stuff Joe said. Just the worldly views, really serious, like Peter Gabriel vibes on the opening track, both sides of the story. But you're not that guy, pal. Peter Gabriel is that guy. You can't do what he does. Can't turn back the time. Terrible sounds on this album. Like, just the sound choices, just everything sounds bad. Super cheesy, overly chill without being like relaxed. And those keys sounds are really annoying. If you remember the movie Airheads, where Adam Sandler and Brendan Fraser like take over that radio thing, and the evil radio operator is going to change the rock station to the mellow sounds of the rain. It'd be like, yes, these are the songs that they would play on the rain. And they're just terrible. We're Sons of Our Fathers is really cheesy. It's the whole thing is really slow. There's no hooks. There's no joy. There's no emotion. There's no energy. It's just like you're waiting in like this little puddle the whole time, and nothing ever happens. 2 stars. Not impressed.
All right, we're going to continue the 2-star tour here. I got Dance Into the Light. I do think it is marginally better than the albums I've mentioned so far, because at least there's some horns in it, and that's more than I can say about Testify or both sides. The songwriting really isn't any better. It has the sort of world music Like it feels like in the 90s, Phil was just like, I really want to do what Peter Gabriel and Paul Simon do. And it just doesn't really work for him because I don't think he quite has the songwriting lyrically, the talent to kind of pull off what they do. The arrangements are uninteresting for the most part, but at least Daryl Sturmer's back on lead guitar. He's usually interesting enough. And he doesn't have the Phoenix horns, but he has the Vine Street horns. What the heck they are. Not quite the same league, I'm afraid. And yeah, the cover, what's with him and some real poor cover choices. Going back to his first solo album, not a big fan of his Tomorrow Never Knows, spoiler alert. And the times they are changing, another song kind of out of his league, just completely out of his wheelhouse. Not a great choice there, buddy boy. Everything else, I mean, Wear My Hat's a terrible song, but at least it's like kind of cheeky a little bit. He's not like trying to tell the plight of Africa or something, although he does do that on a different song. So I don't know. It's a 2-star album. I don't know why I'm continuing to talk about it. It's not really worth the words. So yeah, 2 stars. Again, Phil. Come on, man.
All right. Well, I was up to 2.5 on going back, and I'm staying at 2.5. But I'm not going where you think I'm going. I'm going back to the 80s already. I've got But Seriously at 2.5 stars, number 5 on my list. This, I think, is where things go kind of sideways for him on this. It's that word that Joe keeps using. It's too adult contemporary. He's trying to become too socially conscious. He's trying to make these socioeconomic and political statements that are really just kind of, I don't know what he's trying to say, but it's not interesting at all, is the bottom line. There's some okay songs on this record. I think the opener, Hanging Long Enough, is pretty cool. And that's just the way it is. And Do You Remember? You also have tracks like Something Happened on the Way to Heaven and I Wish It Would Rain Down. It's easy to see why those were singles and why they were hits, but I don't think they're interesting. They have good melodies and you can see like why they would be radio friendly, but I don't think they're great songs. I think just the whole record's kind of lame. The production's overblown. You got the big full choir on that I Wish It Would Rain Down. Just too much. It's too much. It's too glossy. I don't know. It's made for Light FM, where I think his first 3 records prior to this, even though they were pop records, they could get some traction on rock radio with certain cuts. There's nothing rock here at all. And just a very boring, bland adult contemporary record from 1989.
You gotta embrace the cheese to really appreciate this. That said, this is probably where I veer off from Joe. I'm going up to 2.5 stars though here. Number 5, I've got No Jacket Required. Sussudio. Yeah, I'm down. It's fun. I love it. And then Only You and I Know. All right. May have the most 80s aesthetic sound ever. Just ever, 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 ever. Like, define the 80s in one track. That's got to be a contender, no doubt. But then after that, I don't really think just the songs are that catchy and that memorable. The only hit of his I don't really like is Don't Lose My Number, which isn't even one of his bigger hits, but it's fairly well known. One More Night is not my thing. It's really dentist office bad. And I also think it's really weird that Who Said I Would is on the album because it just sounds like Sussudio 2. Like it's almost the carbon copy, just slightly different. Like they had 2 versions and they were like, well, Sussudio is easily the better song. And they were like, let's just keep both of them on the album. Okay. Well, Doesn't Anybody Stay Together Anymore is decent. I like the music, but so many of these songs kind of feel like they just had like leftover melodies and then just slapped together like separate vocal melodies on top. And then there was like, they just had like a collection of 5 different musical pieces and stuff and just picked them and copy and pasted them together. It doesn't seem too natural to me. Close is great with Take Me Home. Love it. That plinko ball, like synth sound, pinballing around. Love it. So it's almost 3 stars because the hits I dig, but not quite as a whole album listen. I think you could get easily a good greatest hits collection of Phil Collins and enjoy Phil Collins, but for like whole album listens, I don't think many of them really do him justice. So there we go. Number 5, No Jacket Required. Joe just was talking about how bad his covers are, which I agree, but I did for a second think you were talking about album covers. And this one's weird. It's got like that weird, like orange, just like glow on his face where he looks like a gothic peach with just like this little hair curl coming down. Weird. So there we go.
Well, I don't think I can live in a world where someone would think one of his 90s albums are better than any of his 80s albums. So this isn't going well for me. I don't about his album covers. There's something to be said for just like putting his face, like he's not like a great looking dude. But he kind of was like a sex symbol at this point in the 80s because he was the leader of one of the biggest pop bands in the world. So he's just like, you know what, I'm just throwing my face on all these covers right at the forefront.
I'm fine with the face. It's that weird orange glow on it that's really just bizarre. I don't think that, like, if you looked at this album and then listened to it, you'd be like, oh, like I thought this was going to be a lot moodier.
I don't mind the record covers. I think they're cool, but I hate the remastered covers where they're like the same photos where he's old. It's just, I do not enjoy those.
Yeah, I don't get why he decided to do that again. I guess it's a little cheeky of him, just throwing his old face on all these album covers, but whatever, Phil.
The album titles aren't much better. They're like sitcom intros where you're just like, oh, hello, I must be going. But seriously, like it's ridiculous.
All right, let's get back to another poor album. I got Going Back. It's my number 5. You guys already said it. Completely pointless. Now, this was made in 2010, kind of before the streaming, took over. So I can see him doing this, being like, okay, I got to pay homage to some of these classics. Maybe you buy this and maybe you go check out their stuff. But in a world like right now where I can just go on Spotify, there's no chance in hell I'm ever going to listen to a Phil Collins version over the original, especially when I can just type in the name. Like, oh, okay, let's see, Uptight, Everything's All Right. Phil Collins version or Stevie Wonder? It's a tough one, but no, it's not. 2.5 stars, just because I think the actual playing on the album is really good. Like it's really on point from what the originals did. But again, why am I listening to someone remake all these classics so close to the original version when I could just be listening to the original versions of these songs? It's not terrible, but it is pointless. So 2.5 stars for Going Back.
All right, my number 4, and I think you guys are missing the point on this record. I got Both Sides, 3.5 stars. I think it's a good record. And here's the thing. Phil is not good at talking about politics or world issues, what's going on in Africa, things that he tried to do on Dance into the Light, and things that he tried to do on But Seriously. He's just not good at it. But Both Sides is a very personal record. It's about his divorce. I think he's much better at writing songs when he's writing something personal. I will say it's not a record you're just going to throw on like at any time and like get a big thrill out of it. It's a very moody, kind of mournful record, very sad. There's a heaviness to it, but I like it. I think the songwriting on it's good. I think his vocal performances are good. Yeah, a lot of good songs. I like the opening track, Both Sides. Every Day is a decent little pop tune. Can't Turn Back the Years, and I've Forgotten Everything. We Fly So Close. I think it's good. I mean, there's a lameness to it for sure, but I mean, like you said, you guys just kind of have to embrace Phil for who he is, and he's laying himself out there on this one. And I think you're being a little hard on him.
I don't think I've ever been more surprised or shocked by Jason's interpretations and reactions to some of the albums we've come across so far in this video. Number 4 for me is Hello, I Must Be Going. 2.5 stars. Let's point out the obvious here. There are very few songs on this album that don't have a version or contraction of the words can't or don't. I don't care anymore. I cannot believe it's true. Do you know? Do you care? It don't matter to me. You can't hurry, love. Don't let him steal your heart away. Why can't it wait till morning? He loves these words. He loves these words. All right, back to what matters. I don't care anymore. Awesome. Love it. One thing that really bothered me in the song like China, why is his accent so pronounced here? It's very weird and unusual. The melody and the lyrics, your mom and dad don't like me, is pretty bad. Like, what's the motivation to this song?
I wrote down, why is he doing a fake British accent when he's British?
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, I would argue that most, singers that are non-American, sometimes you can tell that they're from across, the pond, but most of the time it's not that pronounced. And for some reason on this song, he just felt like really just getting the theater up on this one. I will agree with Jason that he's better at writing personal songs, but a lot of his songs, I don't have any idea where he's coming from on. This is one of those songs. It's got this bright, simple hook, but the lyrics are like self-loathing and coy, and I don't think I understand his humor and like sometimes, and not just like his comedic humor, but like what he finds enjoyable. There's some real disconnect for me there. Do you know? Do you care? Sounds great, but the song kind of feels constantly out of breath. You can't hurry. Love is okay. It don't matter to me. The horns are cool, but I'm not a big fan of the horn sound. I know Joe is. I think it comes off as like really kind of plastic and tacky to me. I think Through These Walls has its moments, but again, you're not Peter Gabriel, dude. Don't Let Him Steal Your Heart Away is nice. Nice, eloquent kind of arrangements, very Elton John-esque. Almost said John Elton. Elton John-esque. Probably my favorite track on it is The West Side, mostly instrumental, or maybe entirely instrumental, but I thought that was good. And I thought, Why Can't I Wait Till Next Time is a pleasant closer. Again, 2.5 stars. Decent. Won't walk out of a room if it's on. But yeah, Hello, I Must Be Going with an exclamation point. Hello, I must be going. I feel like if I were hanging around Phil Collins, it'd just be a lot of me just like, like nodding, like, I don't have any idea what the hell this guy's talking about.
All right, let me shine some light on your British accent issue here. The song is about a poor kid from the other side of town. So he's kind of taking on a Cockney accent to sort of symbolize that. He's going to the rich girl's parents and they don't like him because he's poor, et cetera, et cetera. But I won't be talking about that album for a long time. My number 4 is going to be But Seriously. Jason's kind of right. Like, he is dipping into adult contemporary here. Like, it is sort of happening. But, I mean, come on. The hits on this, you serious? You're going to take both sides hits, non-hits, because he didn't have any from the album because it stunk, over Something Happened on the Way to Heaven? That's a great song. I love the female backing vocals on the chorus. It's so peppy. Colors is like, okay, it's a little adult contemporary, but it's like prog adult contemporary. It's 9 minutes long. It goes through all these changes. Really cool song. I Wish It Would Rain Down with Eric Clapton and Pino Palladino. Phenomenal bass line. Great guitar. Another Day in Paradise, classic as well. Heat on the Streets, super catchy. And love the intro, the first song, Hanging Long Enough. That's kind of, I don't know how to describe the horns, the way it comes in. It's like, and then big pop number. I love the horn sound. I love the Phoenix horns, of course, part of Earth, Wind, and Fire. And he just decided, hey, I better grab the sound. He likes that little R&B inflection, which I love. My favorite part of Phil Collins' singing is the way he kind of has that, little Motown, little Earth, Wind, and Fire to his vocals. And for a little short white guy, he really kind of pulls it off. And he just got, a bunch of good guest stars: David Crosby, Steve Winwood, Leland Sklar on bass, along with Pino Palladino, and Daryl Sturmer on guitar, along with Clapton and Dominic Miller. So you got some really good session players, some good guests, and just the hits on this one. The album cuts pretty much take it or leave it. You can kind of see where he's going, but the hits elevate this to a 4-star album for me. And I think it was in my top like 15 in 1989. I dig it. I dig, but seriously.
All right, my number 3, I'm sticking at 3.5 stars for his debut solo album, Face Value. This one comes out 1 year after Peter Gabriel's Melt album, when he accidentally, along with Hugh Padgham, discovered gated reverb. So then they make this record together and really go for it. In the Air Tonight, those big drum fills. It's interesting. I think on his 90s records, especially Dance Into the Light, there is a feeling that he's trying to be Peter Gabriel, or he wants to be Paul Simon, or some of these other big performers. There is definitely a Peter Gabrielness to this record, but I don't necessarily think that he's trying to like be Peter Gabriel yet at this point. I just feel like he's coming from the same band. They share influences, obviously. There's just an innate similarity. Roof is Leaking is very cool. Just piano, slide guitar. I think it's got a cool atmosphere to it, a cool vibe. And then you close out the side with Droned and Hand in Hand, 2 instrumentals, which I like, both of them, especially the Hand in Hand. I think it's a really good instrumental. So it's kind of moody. Side 1, side 2 is less moody, more pop oriented. You get the big piano ballad, You Know What I Mean. My favorite track on the record is probably the kind of McCartney-esque I'm Not Moving, which I think is really cool. Then there's the really bad cover at the end, Tomorrow Never Knows. I think there's a good amount of good material on the record. Good songs. I think the production sounds really good, but I think it's a little all over the place. It's kind of disjointed. It feels like he's searching for his identity as a solo performer. Doesn't seem totally like sure of himself. Enjoyable to listen to. Not a great record. I got it at 3.5.
Yeah, I've also got Face Value at number 3, but I'm still at 2.5. It does seem a little disjointed and a little bit like he's searching for something. In the Air Tonight rules. I don't really care for This Must Be Love, and this version of Behind the Lines is an abomination. I'll take Duke all day long, or a live version performed by the boys from Genesis any day of the week. Love the piano and The Roof is Leaking. I like the first half of this a decent bit. It is kind of moody and different, especially like it's taking a lot of vibes from like more underground scenes with like this darkness and making it kind of poppy, which was cool. And the most surprising stuff on this album is like the instrumental stuff, and some of the piano and Droned and Hand in Hand are really nice little sections right in the middle. But the second half of this album doesn't do anything for me. I don't find anything to hold on to. And yeah, the Beatles cover is pretty poor. So if the second half was as good as the first, it would be my favorite Phil Collins album, but really falls off a cliff for me. 2.5 stars. Number 3, Face Value.
Also my number 3, Face Value. I think it's really good as far as the highs go. In the Air Tonight, everyone does the no matter where I am, driving in a car, hurtling towards a cliff, I'm doing that. Doesn't matter where or when. It's a classic, the gated reverb, just a really kind of cool, moody song. And I do like his experimentation on this album. The Roof is Leaking, really cool, really different. You know, it's not a song you'd expect to hear from a Phil Collins album. And this one came out 81, so it's right after Duke. I don't know, it's a little more personal, I think, than the Genesis albums. It's a little more about Phil. I don't think he has to worry about kind of fitting into the Genesis mold or anything. So he kind of experimenting here. The 2 instrumentals are cool, but I don't like the way that they are back to back. It's 8.5, almost 9 minutes of instrumentals in a row, which I never think is a very good idea. Probably worked better back in the record days when you had the ending to side 1. Miss Again's good. I like the second half just as much as the first, really. I think the horns really kind of come into their own here, Phoenix Horns, of course. So I think that's a good, he's kind of finding the sound that he would explore and continue with for pretty much all of the 80s. I don't know, there's just something missing though. The Tomorrow Never Knows is a really bad way to close out the album. The two instrumentals, the cover of Behind the Lines, which I don't know if it's really a cover since he wrote it or partly wrote it, but its version is so inferior to the original. It kind of just feels like pointless. So there's a couple pointless songs on here. I really like everything else. I like the songs that he wrote for this album that have words, but there's just not enough of them to make it a great album. I think it's a good album. I give it 4 stars, but it's like a low 4-star. Like it's not, I'll listen to it again, but I'll probably skip a couple tracks.
All right, my number 2 is Hello, I Must Be Going. Opens with I Don't Care Anymore, which is like a better version of In the Air Tonight. I think it has more momentum. It's more melodic. And then if that's like a part 2 of In the Air Tonight, then Through These Walls is like a part 3, I guess. Because I think the drums on that are even more air drum worthy than In the Air Tonight. It sounds huge. Those fills are awesome on there. Really cool song, kind of creepy. Kind of reminds me of Intruder by Peter Gabriel. Kind of, yeah. Really good though. I like it. And tracks like I Don't Care Anymore, I think live better next to the really horn heavy tracks. Whereas I think In the Air Tonight pushed up against tracks like that on face value just seemed kind of disjointed. I think they work together. The kind of moodier, slow building tunes with the big drum fills on this record kind of makes sense next to the horn filled pop that he's doing here on a track like I Cannot Believe It's True. Yeah, I think it's a solid record, more cohesive, better melodies, more memorable. So I think it's quite good. It's getting close to a 4.5 for me, but I'm going to stay at 4 because I think the cover of You Can't Hurry Love on here is unbelievably bad and unbelievably out of place on this record. I don't think it works at all. So 4 stars for Hello, I Must Be Going.
Shocked. Just shocked. Close to 4.5 stars. Shocked. Not like I know people like Phil Collins, and that's not a crazy, but for Jason, I'm just shocked. Number 2 for me, Dance Into the Light, and I'm up to 3 glorious stars here, baby. I will listen to this again privately on my own accord. That's what 3 stars means to me. I will admit I'm being very subjective on this one. I had to listen to all these chronologically, and after the ones into this, I just wanted some horns and some upbeatness, and I got it right off the bat with the title track. Rest of the album is, or the rest of the first half is a little lame, but the bass is popping a little bit. There's a little bit more fun and cheese. Lorenzo is really bad. Something about meeting a sleeping lion. I don't know. Just Another Story. I don't really mind the jazzy cool vibes on it. Love Police is pretty lame song, but I kind of like it musically. This just walks the line of being like cheesy enjoyable for me. Not a lot of like appreciation, just fun. Wear My Hat is pretty inexcusably just like a Paul Simon ripoff. Like, damn. But I do think the hidden gem of his entire catalog, It's In Your Eyes, is on this album. Yeah, just some catchy melodies, good bass, nice guitar solo, and ought to know by now. And the album just kind of settles into what it is in the middle of it, and it won me the fuck over. Like, I think River So Wild is cool, upbeat, cool guitar tone, a little bit of a solo. No Matter Who is decent. It's just like more tuneful than a lot of other stuff. Live drumming is a big part of this. Like he puts away the electronics and starts to drum again. That makes a big difference on here. Yeah, the Dylan closer is pretty unforgivable as well. Interesting reading about this album and the little mini feud he had with the Gallagher brothers from Oasis, because they just like downright shitted on this album and like kind of like told him to his face or like called him out. And he was just like, damn, like I respect those guys, but man, they're being jerks. And they were just like, they're among the biggest tool bags ever, and they were just like, "You suck, dude. You suck." It's just like, wow, geez. That's kind of what I was doing earlier in the video, but I got your back, Phil, on Dance into the Light. I liked it. 3 stars, my number 2.
Oh man, the Gallagher brothers were right. And this is a new low for you, Crams there. This is up there with Cut the Crap, I think.
I have it as 1 star difference than you guys. Come on.
Yeah, but still, just the fact that you would listen to this again.
You had it a 1.5 above where I had it. I had it 1.5.
Jason, shut up, dude. You almost put a Phil Collins. You're rating Phil Collins albums higher than Wish You Were Here right now. So,
Yeah, I like these records more than Wish You Were Here. I'll say it.
So we're not going to go through all of our sordid history of albums right now. Let's get on to my next 4.5 star album, No Jacket Required. I think this album pretty much just rules straight through. No, I don't need to hear Sussudio again. I've heard it plenty. I still think it's a good song, but I pretty much know every beat to it. But everything else I think is really strong on here. It's kind of like an uneasy combo of his synth pop and his R&B leanings. A lot of drum machines, really danceable. And you got the Phoenix horns kind of starting with Hello, I Must Be Going. They're really just omnipresent on a lot of these songs. And I think on this, they're just pretty much everywhere. There's some like almost Prince-like songs on here. You got sort of like the Hall & Oates Loverboy rock of I Don't Want to Know. Only You Know and I Know. Has, he's got a touch of Motown in his voice, of course. And he's got a really good voice, great vocal control. I love the no-nos and the oohs and all the stuff he's throwing in there. He's just a really kind of vibrant vocalist, which I always like. I think he's very underrated as far as his vocals go. I think he sounds great on pretty much everything here. Even One More Night, which I never liked much before, I think fits well into this album. And it's not bad. It's not the worst Phil Collins ballad. Don't Lose My Number, kind of Genesis-y. Who Said I Would, kind of Princey. And, I think it ends really well with Take Me Home. I think it really just gigantic. Love the kind of circular drums, kind of like, especially if you listen to it on headphones, it like goes around you as you're listening to it, which is really cool. And I just think all of these tracks work. And there's a good combination of like big hits. There's a couple moodier numbers as well. I think it's just a really solid album. One of the better ones of 1985, for sure. Bad year, but I think I probably discounted this one a little bit when we were doing our albums of the year series because it could have break into my top 5 maybe. It's a good album. It's just a good album. If you like Phil Collins, you should really like this album.
Yeah, that is my number 1. No Jacket Required. Opens with Sussudio, which immediately signals that he'll be leaning heavily into his pop side on this record. He kind of eschews the moodier opening tracks that he had on his previous records, like In the Air Tonight and I Don't Care Anymore. Nothing like that here. This is all upbeat, up-tempo, big horns, big melodies, great production. I think it sounds fantastic. And I think, for a lot of people, especially those that followed him into his solo career from Genesis, this might be where he started to lose some people. But I think it's an incredibly well-constructed pop album. And given Cram's track record of loving 80s pop, I am completely shocked that he put this below Dance into the Light and only has it at 2.5 stars. Is that right? 2.5? That is, you're talking about me shocking you, and I think that is far more shocking that you rate this so lowly, because I think this seems like right up your alley. I think.
Well, I did say I do not like the horn sound that much.
Okay. Well, that would be a problem then, but.
And my 80s pop fandom leaves heavily to new wave stuff.
Fair, but I mean, the hooks on this are just so ridiculous. I can't believe that you don't like it. And it sounds fantastic, I think. But anyways, you got a lot of great tracks, big singles. You also have tracks like Only You and I Know, which is amazing. It's like a surefire hit. I can't believe it wasn't a single. Same thing with I Don't Want to Know, just another killer song. For me, the one blemish on it, and Cram pointed it out as a low point as well, is One More Night. I just think it's totally just a super cheesy 80s ballad, kind of tailor-made for middle school dances and not much else. Don't think it's a very good song, but I think the rest of it is top notch. Just, I mean, if you like pop music, it's really great. The mixing on it, everything sounds fantastic. 4.5 stars for me. No jacket required.
All right. My number one is But Seriously. Worst album title, maybe of all time, especially with the dots before it. But easily his best album cover. Joe, you said he's not a great looking dude. He looks pretty rocking on this album cover. He's got the Instagram angles down. He's got that stern look, little shadows, looking good. Hang in Long Enough is pretty good opener. I like it. Yeah, I think this is just kind of his best reined in sound, just the best balance of stuff I dislike versus can tolerate and like. I think it's got a lot of his best writing on here. That's just the way it is. It's super cheesy, but I like it. Colors is a downfall for me on this. It's really ambitious, but I don't think he pulls it off. But I think I Wish It Would Rain Down is awesome. I think Something Happened on the Way to Heaven is awesome. Another Day in Paradise, one of my favorite keyboard licks ever. You could put that keyboard lick over anything and it would be, I wish it was my ringtone, to be honest. There's got to be a way to make that happen. You get some seductive sax on All of My Life. Yeah, I think Heat on the Street with the ooh woos is really good. Just pretty good songs all the way through, except for Colors. So I've got it at 3 stars. My favorite Phil Collins album, But Seriously.
Well, my number one Phil is going to be the only one left. I got Hello, I Must Be Going. I just think this sort of balances the best of his like pop tendencies and sort of the earlier where he's a little more experimental. I Don't Care Anymore. Great album opener, very moody. Those big kind of like haunting synths that are also kind of sparse. Those drums kind of just like real kind of cool arrangements. Very Phil Collins kind of esque, I guess that's his sound. And then I think there's some really great horns. I love the Phoenix horns. I love his R&B sensibilities, and I think he uses them really well on this. I think Do You Care is awesome. It has this just massive wave wall of synths. Kind of sounds like a Rush like 80s song, maybe like Between the Wheels or something. It's very moody, very kind of dark. And there's a couple other darker ones. Through These Walls is definitely like the sequel to Intruder, but I think it's really kind of cool. I'm not going to say it's like a great vote or a great lyrically, but I think it's interesting. It's kind of creepy. Like it really sets the mood. I think he does a really good job on that one. And I think everything else is good. I like You Can't Hurry Love, his version of it. I think it's pretty solid. You know, I like his kind of Cockney accent, the same one he would use on Robbery, Assault, and Battery back on Trick of the Tail. And I like kind of that sort of, you know, not so straight, you know, with No Jacket Required, it's like straight pop. He's a little more playful. He's a little more interesting, I think. I have it at 4.5 stars. And I just think all the way through, it's a little more interesting than his next two kind of just massive pop numbers. So I just like the combination of the little more experimental side, but you still get the R&B from the Phoenix Horns. And it's still plenty of super catchy songs on here. So I think it's a great album. 4.5 stars. Just the best of Phil right here.
There you have it. That's our ranking of the Phil Collins studio albums. So now, how do you feel about Phil overall after doing that?
Kind of what I expected. I mean, I love the guy. Like I said, my favorite era of Genesis is like the last few Gabriel and the first few Phil. I think I don't know. I can't really explain why I like him more than I like his albums. I think my favorite of his pop hits stack up to most 80s pop hits, especially like the darker, moodier synth stuff. I feel like he never made his, I feel like the best stuff never came out of him, or he just like, it was in there and he could just never get it all onto one album, is kind of how I feel. Like if you just worked with every instinct he had and just like perfected it, he could have made like one amazing album, I feel like. But there's not really one album on here that I like need in my life that badly. But as you'll see tomorrow, some of the songs I can't live without. So
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that in regards to like him not having a perfect record, I think it's important to acknowledge that Genesis was happening simultaneously. So a lot of his energy was going elsewhere.
that's a really good point. But I'll say not like a perfect record, but like an album that really like defines who he is. Like I feel like he's just all over the place and lost on like most albums. And like the most cohesive albums are the ones where he just has terrible ideas and ran with them, like the Covers album or Testify. Or I'm just like, okay, you had a vision and it was just a bad vision. But I feel like through the 80s, he had a lot of really great ideas, but it was just probably, like you're right, probably because he wasn't Genesis, but they just swirled around too much and just came out kind of messy.
Yeah, I totally disagree with that. I think he knew exactly what he was doing with both bands, and I think he saved sort of the darker, more progressive, less overtly poppy stuff for Genesis. And he knew what he was going to do on the solo stuff. As soon as he got the Phoenix Horns together with him touring and everything like that, he knew he was going to be super into the pop, the ton of R&B stuff, especially on his his vocal delivery, just kind of really leaning into that side, his love of Motown, his love of funk, and all that other stuff. I think it's pretty clear once you get past, face value is sort of his, I'm just going to try out a bunch of stuff. I think starting with But Seriously, he kind of knew exactly that's the direction you want to go. Obviously, you don't like that direction, but I think that was a good choice for him because it's not mixing too much with what he was doing with Genesis. I mean, other than like No Reply at All, where he had the Phoenix Horns on the Genesis album on Abacab, he kind of took that sound and was like, okay, this is my sound. This is what I'm going to run with for me and my solo career. It's not going to interfere too much with Genesis. It's kind of its own thing. And I think he kind of kept the worlds pretty separate. I don't think there's any like Genesis or Phil song that I would confuse one with the other.
I completely disagree with that. I mean, I can't understand what songs were like, what the reason for his albums versus like Mama could easily be on a Phil Collins record. Land of Confusion could easily be on a Phil Collins record. Like, I don't understand what the decisions were to kind of separate the two. It's a very weird period to understand like what the deal was. Like, and almost like other than like the really Motown horn heavy kind of stuff, why didn't you just record this stuff with Genesis for the most part? Like, I don't know. I don't get it.
Overall, I think he gets a bad rap. He's made some really bad records, but I think for the most part, the majority of his solo catalog is pretty good, pretty listenable. I'm pro Phil.
My opinion actually improved a little bit. I never really got into his 80s solo stuff. Like obviously love the hits and everything, but I thought they were deeper and more interesting than I gave him credit for. Obviously, everything after that I really dislike, but in his prime, Phil was a hell of a hit maker.
All right, so let us know what you think of Phil Collins. Let us know what you think of our lists. Drop your own list down in the comments as well. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed yet. Hit the bell for notifications and check out the description for links to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. And check back tomorrow, and we'll be giving you our top 10 Phil Collins songs each. Thanks for watching. We'll see you then.